everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm going to be going over one of my favorite kind of tropes to read, and that is enemies to lovers. So I am surprised I haven't done one of these videos yet. I have a lot of enemies to lovers favorites and recommendations. So maybe another video will be coming soon. I'm just going to go over probably about like 8 books for this video so I don't go too long. But I absolutely love enemies to lovers. It really sucked me in a few years ago when I got sucked back into reading romance. And some of these were some of those books that were like my first enemies to lovers. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. I do want to start off with one of my favorite enemies to lovers romances. I think it's a perfect example of that trope. It's not my favorite book by this author, but honestly, I think based upon reread, I'd probably give it more stars than I did originally. I think I give this book 4 stars when I first read it. But I think it's such a good example, and that is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. If you know me, you know I love Sophie Lark. She's one of my favorite authors. I love reading her Mafia series. And this started it all for the Brutal Birthright series. And this is Brutal Prince. And this is the romance between Callum Griffin and Ada Gallo. And as you can see over here, I have the rest of the series along with the Kingmakers. So I absolutely love this series. This one is pretty crazy. There's so many like crazy hijinks that goes on with this like hate to love, enemies to lovers. They start out as true enemies. I mean, their families have been like a rivalry going on between them for years and years. And the Griffins are the Irish mafia, and then you have the Gallos. They are the Italian mafia. And Ada gets it in her head one night that they go crash Callum's party. The Griffins are kind of like more almost like businessmen type of thing, and they, her family's kind of more old school. And so they're having a big party at the Griffins, which happens to be, I think, just down the street from them. And they decide to go crash it. And she ends up sneaking in the house, and she goes to like his library, but hides when he comes in, and she's trying to distract him by like doing something, but it starts a fire. And so she runs off, but Callum sees her and he's livid, and he follows her, and shit goes down between her. She has her older brother Sebastian with her, and some stuff happens that even comes to play into the other later series. But what ends up happening is their fathers basically come to agreement, like, we need to squash this freaking feud. And they basically kind of forced arranged marriage for Callum and Ada so that their families don't go to war and more shit goes down between them, because right now is not the right time. And then any future kids they have is going to like tie their families together. So basically they're forced into a marriage. They hate each other. I mean, the antics, the stuff they do against each other is crazy. I mean, we have her forcing him to wear this like brown ugly tux. We have the strawberry incident where she eats strawberries knowing he's allergic to strawberries, and that's dangerous. Almost like a drowning incident. Stuff escalates between these two. But what I loved is that as they are in their marriage and start to get closer and kind of try to change to realize like we can be a good partnership, like we can be true partners in this, because their sexual tension also is off the hook. It's just a great time. It's really quirky, funny, like enemies to lovers, and it really starts off one of the best series and one of my favorite series that leads to Kingmakers, and everything starts here. So I would definitely recommend this one. So then I have one of the books that I read that really got me into dark romance, and that is Corrupt by Penelope Douglas. they write like such amazing dark romance, and I think this is kind of a good intro to dark romance, even though it can get pretty crazy and dark, and some crazy stuff goes in these. This is actually the first book in the Devil's Night series. I still need to continue with this. I stopped, and I don't know why I didn't, but I absolutely loved this book. This is the first book. This is between Michael and Rika. And this series actually goes between two timelines. So you're going to be in the past, like when there was a Devil's Night where they used to, like, these four horsemen kind of guys. They're rich, they're popular, they kind of get up to antics and craziness on Devil's Night. And then you go to the current time, which is, you know, years later. This goes between those two times where Rika, when she was like in high school, and ended up got to go on this Devil's Night with Michael, who was older than her, and she had a crush on him, and she kind of always liked him. And craziness ensues on this Devil's Night, which leads three of these guys to get arrested. And so now we jump ahead in time, and they are finally getting out of jail, out of prison or whatever, and they are gonna go after the person that they blame, that they think is the cause for them being arrested, and that is Rika. So Michael is she's actually dating his younger brother at this point, and she's not really that into him. She's always had a thing for Michael, but Michael is after her. And when I tell you things get dark, it's crazy. There's some kinkiness in here. It gets wild, and it took me on a wild ride, and I thought it was so fun. It's a great series to get into, and Penelope Douglas is just such a great author, so I would definitely recommend this. Okay, so I have the next book, which was really different, kind of enemies to lovers, but really, really great. And that is Pestilence by Thalassa. This is the first book I've ever read by this author, and I really need to continue this series, which is the story of my life. I always stop series. But I absolutely loved this book. It was so unique and different than anything I'd ever read. And this is a true enemies to lovers because we have Pestilence, and he is one of the four horsemen, obviously, and he's traveling throughout the United States at this point, spreading famine and the plague. Plague is, you know, killing thousands and thousands of people at this point. And then we have, I believe it's Sarah. Yes, Sarah. She is a firefighter, and she's one of the last few, like, first responders in this town. They kind of have to draw sticks, and she draws a short one where she's going to have to be the one that stays back to kill Pestilence. What's crazy is she actually does kill him, but he is immortal, and so he, like, is, you know, he's brought back, and he is pissed because he actually asked her for mercy and all this kind of stuff, and she still killed him. So he decides to drag her along with him. He makes it so that she's not affected by, you know, the plague or anything like that, and she's forced to be dragged behind his horse and watch him kill, like, all these people. You know, he looks at them as black or white. People are bad. We're here to, you know, spread this plague and kill lots of people. And he forces her to basically kind of go on this ride with him and watch innocent people die excruciating deaths. And so obviously they hate each other, but it's really beautiful because Pestilence obviously has never really dealt with a human or anything, and he starts to kind of see that there's more to humanity. There's more humanity and depth to humans by being with Sarah, and he starts to kind of fall for her, and he's, you know, he's a virgin hero, obviously, and it's just really sweet. But I absolutely love this. I thought it was a really great enemies to lovers romance. Okay, another one that I have is kind of a different kind of enemies to lovers. This is one of my favorite books from 2022, and that is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartmann. This book is dark, so just be prepared. Check your triggers because there's a lot of dark content in the beginning of this book, and it carries throughout the book. So what we have is Dean and Cora, and Cora, and they are they don't get along. So Dean has actually been engaged to her sister. I think that they've been together for like a lot of years, because that's what's kind of surprised me, is that they were still engaged and not married at this point. But Dean and Cora knew each other from, like, I believe back in high school, and she did not like him. He started dating her sister, and they've always had this contentious relationship where they prank each other, be rude to each other, mess with each other. So they just do not get along. And at the beginning of this book, you have them out for her sister's like birthday party out at a bar, and Cora decides to stay back. She kind of like loses her like purse or whatever, and so she had to call somebody, and the only person she could reach was Dean to pick her up. So he comes to pick her up, and what ends up happening is they get kind of pulled over, attacked by a serial killer, and he basically kidnaps people that don't like each other or not with each other, and then tries to force them to like fall in love and then kill them. So he's pretty demented, and you're gonna have some really dark stuff to read in the beginning of this book. It is so crazy what he puts them through, and kind of these things, these like confessions, and them having to depend on each other while they're captive, and like basically kind of trust each other. And it's just so emotional because there is sexual assault on Paige. You know, he has to witness her get attacked, and then he wants them to be together. So it's a very traumatic, and then the book, it just gets so much, it's just heavy, because once they are free, then they have this kind of like traumatic experience they experience together, and then they kind of are like almost codependent on each other and want to be together and only can rely on each other. And so it changes everything. So I really love this. It starts off as enemies, you know, but are they really enemies? You know, there's a lot more to it than that. So I absolutely love this book. But if you have not read it yet, please just check your triggers, because it is very dark. So the next book that I have is a mafia romance. This is actually the third book in the Kings of Italy. So I definitely recommend, sorry to do this, but you need to read the first two books, which is Mafia Mistress, and I think Mafia Darling. So this is Mafia Madman by Mia Finelli, and I absolutely love this series. It's so amazing. This book is between Enzo and Gia. And Enzo was introduced in the last two books because he was basically against the lead character Fausto in that. And he was kind of going after Fausto, where Fausto ended up kidnapping him, holding him captive, torturing him, brutally torturing him. He ends up getting away, but he has some major issues from that trauma. He's basically kind of like on the run. His family like has to like live in hiding because Fausto is after him. So he's kind of like living out on this yacht, like constantly on the run from Fausto. And so he happens to go inland, and he goes to this fashion designer kind of thing. And Gia is actually the younger sister of the heroine from Mafia Mistress, who is currently with Fausto, is married to him and everything. And he had seen Gia when he was held captive, because she snuck down there and saw him. And he sees her at this fashion show where she's like trying to be a designer, but she's forced to rock the runway for this private showing. And he knows who she is. And so he instantly is like, I'm getting her. So he sets up a meet with her, but like he like almost crumbles in this building and everything, and captures her. So this is a captive. He hates her. He hates, you know, Fausto. He just wants revenge on Fausto and his wife and everything for what happened to him. And so it starts this crazy dynamic between them. Gia is no little soft girl. She's a fighter. He literally has her in a cage and forces her to be naked, so she starts doing naked yoga. I mean, it's hilarious. This book has this theme. It's got, you know, captor, captive, dom, sub. We got praise, a little bit of degradation in here, edging. I mean, it's spicy. So this was such a great enemies to lovers. The next book I have is almost like it is a bully romance, but it also is enemies to lovers, and that is Deviant King by Rina Kent. I actually just did a reread of this because I want to go back into Rina Kent's back history and read all her books, her backlist. And this is between Aiden and Elsa, and it's actually 3 books, so just be prepared if you do decide you want to read this. It's 3 books based off this one couple, so this ends in a cliffhanger and all of that. But basically Elsa starts at this new school. She is her mother and father have died. It's kind of mysterious what happened to them. She doesn't really know. She kind of lost a lot of her memories from that time because it was kind of tragic and traumatic, so she lost her memories. But she's living with her aunt and uncle and starts at a new school. The first day she goes there, Aiden sees her and literally comes up to her, and he's like kind of runs the school with a few of his other friends, and he like grasps her neck and is just like, you know, you're dead. Like, basically he threatens her in front of the school. So from that point on, she's treated pretty bad. She's bullied by like his minions. He never fully bullies her, but he's kind of responsible for her being treated like crap at the school. And she has no idea like why he's after her. Well, what ends up happening is that's gone on for a couple years, and now it's their senior year, and she has a best friend that's bullied by one of his best friends. And she happens to see him like bullying her, so she's filming it. But Aiden catches her and then decides, all bets are off. Now I'm messing with you. Now it's on. And he actually kind of goes after her, but then he also wants to make her his. I mean, this guy is a psycho. He was giving me major Carter Mahoney vibes from Untouchable, which is one of my favorite books. And it was just a fun ride. It's like a crazy fun ride to see and to learn what happened in their history, and it's a lot of stuff going on. So I would definitely recommend it. It's a great fun read, but it is high school, so if you're not into that, just be aware of that. So the next book that I want to recommend, I think, is like one of the first like enemies to lovers that like I really loved. And I don't really read a lot of this author anymore, but I do still love this book, and that is Vicious by LJ Shen. This is, I think, the first book. Yeah, it's Sinners of Saint. This is book number 1. It's my favorite book out of the series. I don't know what it is. I just love it. This is between Vicious and Amelia, and he was a shit. So he is a super, like, this starts off like in high school, and then I think you go like 8 to 10 years later. I'm not sure the timeline. So it kind of goes in dual timelines as well in this one. But you start out with them in high school, and he is super rich. His parents let him do whatever the hell he wants. And Amelia, her family works for his parents so that she lives on like the same property as him and ends up going to the same school as him. So he hates her. For some reason, they get off to the wrong foot immediately. He hates her. He bullies her. He makes her life hell. At one point, she dates one of his friends, and he hates that. And so things end up going sideways when they were younger here, where she ends up packing her stuff and leaving. And then you have the time jump, and you go to the current time, where I think it's like 8 to 10 years later. And she is like not doing well. She's working multiple jobs, really struggling. Her sister's really sick, so she has to take care of her and kind of be the breadwinner. And then all of a sudden Vicious shows up, and he offers her a job for him, like to work for him. And it's really good money that she cannot pass up, so she takes it. And so it starts to go there. And nothing's what it seems, and Vicious is just... he is such an alpha hole. He's a dick, but I don't know why. I loved it. I loved their dynamic and everything. It was such a great enemies to lovers, and I really want to reread this. Every time I talk about it, I want to reread it. Okay, and then the last book that I want to bring up is one of this new series that I've started reading, and that is Deviant Hearts by Jagger Cole. I have fallen in love with this series. This is book number 1 in the Dark Heart series, and it is a Mafia series. I've never read Jagger Cole before this book, and this book just sucked me in, and I haven't been able to stop reading this. I really want to dive in his backlist because I think he writes such amazing Mafia romance. And this is a arranged marriage, kind of forced marriage between Ares. He's from the Greek. He's the new head of the Greek mafia. And then we have Nev, who is, I think, the niece to the head of the Irish mafia. So the reason it was like enemies to lovers to start out with was that their families were kind of like at war. They were feuding. There was a big shootout between their families. So she even like saw him across the building the other way, and she kind of just like hated him because they just hated that family because they were at war with them. But Ares has just come into power as the head of this Greek mafia, and he decides to meet with Killian, who is the head of the Irish mafia, and they come to an agreement. He wants an arranged marriage so that they can put this feud past them and they can work together. So then he agrees to let his niece, Nave, marry him, and she doesn't want any of it. She hates him. She doesn't want anything to do with him, and she didn't really want arranged marriage or any of that kind of thing. So she really fights this, and she can be kind of annoying a little bit. She fights it. She acts like a little brat. She acts out. But at a certain point, like, Ares has had enough, and he gets after it. And he basically stakes his claim on her. And let me tell you, the angry sex in this was hot. So, there's a lot going on in this book, too. There's a lot of suspense. There's a whole timeline that's a little bit darker that ends up like with like a kidnapping. There's a dangerous enemy. There could be a little bit of torture in there. So just check your triggers because it is a mafia romance. But it was so exciting. Like, I couldn't put it down. I gave this 5 stars, and it was my first book that I read from Jagger. And it is super spicy. It was just such a great time. So I would definitely recommend that one. So those are my recommendations for Captor Captive. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you can, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any Captor Captive romances that you want to recommend, please leave them down below. I'm always up for more recommendations. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.